Hey everybody, I assume you're watching this video because you want to learn more about the Creality K2 Plus. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at in this video. We're going to fire up a print and go over a general design overview, kind of compare it against its competition, and see, is this the printer that'll put Creality back on the map as the top manufacturer of 3D printers? Just as a little spoiler alert, this thing is awesome. I've fired up a ton of prints and they all have just been coming out great. So we'll go over print quality, speed and features, and all of the crazy stuff going on with this machine. So as the name would suggest, this is Creality's K2 printer. It's the follow-up to their K1 series, and they've decided to basically pack this thing with features to the point where I'm not really sure I could ask for anything else of this machine because it's got everything that I need in here. And I'm seriously considering having this be my one and only printer for all of the design and prototyping work that I do. What makes this machine so great? Well, it's got a 350mm cubed build area, so you can print absolutely massive stuff like this. This is my typical test print that I print on all of my videos, or most of them, but this is scaled up to 500%. So this basically filled the entire build volume of the printer. And also I've been running this thing for 3 days straight, printing out these little multicolored doodads. So we'll take a look at those. And also I printed out a speed benchy, but I know you guys complain when I print speed benchies out in white, so I also printed out in blue and black. So we'll take a look at all of those. Unboxing and setup, nothing crazy is going on there. The CFS unit is packaged inside of the machine, so it saves a little bit of space in shipping. But one thing you might want to note is this machine is heavy. So let's, it's really big and heavy. Let me get in playing with it here. You can see this thing is absolutely huge. And it's incredibly well built. Like, this thing is built like a tank. It's made out of an upper and lower die-cast aluminum frame, and then I believe the left and right sides are single-piece die-cast frames as well. So in terms of build quality, this thing is off the charts. Like, you know, it's really important to have a stiff frame when you're building a 3D printer, because when you get to those high speeds, you get all these vibrations and wobbling and artifacts that appear in your prints. And they did a great job here making this basically as stiff as possible. This thing is absolutely, like, incredibly strong. And it's got a full enclosure so you can print at higher temperatures. It's got a heated chamber. It's got a super thick heated bed. So they've gone through and done all of the due diligence in order to make a machine that's built well and will produce good prints for years to come. Now let's open this thing up and take a look at what we've got inside. This is yet another one of my batches of multicolor prints. I'm going to do all the post-processing on these things and install little magnets in the feet. They're just fun little toys. I ran out of magnets, but they look something like this when they're finished, and they allow me to just stick them onto things. So I can have these little creepy guys watching over me. It's just a neat little tool. You can use it as a refrigerator magnet or a magnet checker. I call them steel checkers, basically. You know, you can see what material things are made out of. This is aluminum. Let's see if we can find any steel on this thing. Well, these rods are obviously steel, so there you go. You can just stick them onto stuff like that. So just fun little prints. I'm trying to print less trinkets and crap when I'm doing my videos and actually print out stuff that I'm going to use or give away. Multicolor printing seems to be working quite well. Let's take this tray out of here and we'll get a closer look at this massive build tray. So one of the things that's really nice about this machine is since you have such a large build area, you can load up a ton of parts and do a mass production run. I've only got this about half full. I bet I could double the number of little guys on this tray if I really wanted to. This takes about 11 hours to print. So if you look at that on a per unit basis, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm printing out about 30 of these guys in 11 hours, basically 3 an hour. So quite a good production rate. And if I doubled the amount of parts on this tray, I could have it print about 60 of them in a 24-hour period. So in terms of a mass production situation where you fire this printer up once per day and just harvest a ton of parts off of here, I think that would be great for this machine. Also, since you've got a heated chamber with this little chamber heater in the back, you're able to run higher temperature materials like ABS and polycarbonate without any issues. And let's do a little steel check. Yes, that is a hardened steel nozzle. Otherwise our little monkey here wouldn't be able to hold on to it. So you've got a hardened steel nozzle on there that should allow you to print composite materials. So if you're doing a lot of carbon fiber nylon, you'd be able to do it on this machine and produce absolutely massive parts. Now, even if you're printing materials that don't require a heated chamber will give you that extra flexibility in terms of tuning your process parameters to get as good of print quality and layer adhesion and all that as possible. Even if you're printing stuff like PLA and PETG, you might find that bumping the temperature up 5 or 10 degrees will give you better print quality and better parts. So it's just another option to be able to play with the print parameters there. Also, they've done a great job with packaging here. It's easy to make a large printer that takes up a lot of space, but in this case, they've made sure to kind of slimline everything and make it take up as little space as possible. So despite this having an absolutely massive print volume, it actually doesn't take up all that much space on my desk. You don't want to be wasting space and having some big bulky machine that does the same job. One of the most important things for print quality is first layer quality, and I've got to say that they've absolutely nailed it on this machine. I am perfectly confident filling this entire tray with parts because I know that I'm getting good first layer quality on all of my prints. Let's take a look at the bottom of this part. Yeah, like, take a look at that. You're not gonna get much better than this. Do you see any issues with that first layer? It's just very good. Stayed stuck down for the entire print. If you have a printer that has a large build volume that allows you to do batch printing, but you don't have a perfect first layer going down, then you're gonna have issues where one of those parts pops off, and then you're gonna ruin the entire batch of parts because one of the prints failed. With this one, because it has such good first layer quality, I don't have to worry about these pieces coming loose. But when it's time to break them off, it comes right off. So, you know, that's just, they've done a really good job with this. Also, this is the best quality PEI spring steel sheet that I've had from Creality. On the previous versions of the K1, they had some issues where, you know, these were stickers and they would wear out over time, or they had uneven coating on these beds. This one is absolutely perfect, so you're going to get much better print quality just due to the higher quality PEI spring steel bed. On the back side, you have a smooth sheet. I used to prefer dual-sided sheets, just in case this side ever got scratched or whatever, you could flip it over. But I've found that in practical use, you pretty much never have this side get damaged unless you're doing like kind of dumb stuff. And I really like using the opposite side of the bed for 3D printer bed adhesive. So you've got different surface finish and bed adhesion options when you've got, you know, one flat uncoated side. All right, now I want to give you a closer look inside of the machine. It's kind of hard to get an angle in here to actually see this stuff. Yeah, this is really challenging. But basically we've got a relatively thick aluminum plate bed in there. It looks like it's maybe a 6 to 8 millimeter thick. If you have a thinner plate, you're gonna have issues when it heats up, the bed warps, and then you get poor first layer quality. Here's our Core XY motion system. The motor's turned on right now, so it's not wanting to move. And this would actually be a good time to test their claim that they're using servo motors. So I'm gonna pull this forward. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so one of the other big things about this machine is they're using servo motors. They're closed loop FOC type motors. So instead of a traditional stepper motor where you have discrete steps where the printer just kind of cogs from one step to the other, these have FOC servo motors. And I've actually done a lot of research on FOC motors because there's a project I was working on that utilized them. But without going into like a big technical deep dive on that, basically the way that FOC motors work is they make sure that the motor's magnetic field is always 90 degrees out of phase with the rotor, and that makes sure you're getting high efficiency when you're moving, which helps reduce the amount of heat that the motors produce, and it also reduces the amount of noise that the motors produce. So these should be quieter and faster than pretty much anything else on the market. And watch this, when I pull this, you can hear the motor fighting against me. Oh! Like, the printer is not happy with me doing that, but basically the motors do a great job of resisting any type of force trying to bump it out of place. So just really good motor performance there. They're also using thicker belts here, so that should help them maintain their ability to control the position of the print head despite everything being a little bit larger and heavier on this machine. We've got 2 fan ducts on the sides. It's using a linear rail up top there, 2 linear rods on the sides. But really there's way too much to cover on this machine in one video, so this is just going to be an overview video of as much about this as I can talk about. Really, I think I need to break this into multiple parts because there's just a crazy amount of engineering and detail that went into this machine. And I gotta say, I'm incredibly impressed. My only complaint would be that for this bed, since they're only using 2 lead screws, one on the left and one on the right, it could wobble a little bit front to back like this. So if you're printing an extremely heavy part that's up towards the front and you're doing a lot of Z-hops, it could set up some kind of vibration or oscillation, and you might see a reduction in print quality. But that's relatively easy to avoid if you just print heavy objects such that they're centered in the middle of the bed. I don't think that'll be too much of a problem. And this is a design that a lot of printers use and they're not having too much issues with it. So yeah, just super impressive stuff here. I think Creality actually pulled it off. They needed to do something crazy to be able to set themselves apart from the other brands on the market. And this is basically a no compromises Core XY large format multicolor 3D printer. And speaking of that multicolor, let's fire up a multicolor benchy so you can just see how that machine operates, and we'll get this machine running so you can kind of see how loud it is. All right, so let's go ahead and print out this multicolor benchy. You can select what color you want everything to be. So I can assign all of these to red if I wanted to, and then I'd just print out a red benchy. But you can also assign these to the colors that are assigned in the slicer. You can also disable the CFS unit on the top here. So in that case, it'll just draw from the filament spool that you can attach onto the side. So right here you can see this filament spool holder. You can put a larger spool on here if you wanted to, or feed this thing with an external super large spool that just feeds endless filament into this little holder. And basically you just reroute this little Bowden tube from the CFS system over to the filament spool holder. Or you could get a little Y splitter and manage it that way. But in any case, I really like how they've got the spool holder on the side instead of on the back like a lot of printers have been doing lately. So this is just a lot easier to access and feed. If you don't want this spool holder hanging off the side, it's just 2 bolts in the back and you can remove it, and that'll restore this nice clean side. And if you want to like tuck it up into the corner and this is in the way, then you can get rid of that. Also, we've got a full-size USB port here, so you can just plug in any typical USB drive to get your print started here. But we want to print with the CFS here, so we'll go ahead and turn that on. We're going to go ahead and click print, and it'll fire everything up, and we'll have a multicolor benchy in about 25 minutes. I'm going to be using this machine to do some advanced prototyping for one of the 3D printer designs that I'm working on. And what having a large build volume like this will allow me to do is do full-scale prototyping before I have my final machined parts made. And because this thing is so large and fast, you can get even large complex parts off of the machine to be able to test fit or test assemble and do all that kind of prototypey stuff in a short amount of time. So that's just going to help accelerate your design workflows. Once you have your final part, you're probably going to want that machined or 3D printed out of metal, because metal's just a better material all around. So if you want to get metal parts made, I really suggest checking out today's sponsor, JLC 3DP and JLC CNC. Using JLC 3DP's 3D printing service, you can drag and drop your parts to upload them, and using their online quoting engine, they can tell you exactly how much it's going to cost to have your parts made. There's a ton of different materials and processes available to you using JLC 3DP. And I've personally used a lot of their CNC machining services through their sister company, JLC CNC, and all the parts that I've got from them have been of excellent quality, and the pricing that I've got from them has always been very competitive. So if you want to try out some of JLC 3DP's 3D printing services, I'll leave a link in the description below. Feel free to check them out, and I want to thank them for supporting the channel. So let's get back to talking about the K2 Plus. When the machine is getting started, you can hear it's got a filament purge system in the back. It's just like the one on Bambu Lab, so yeah, we've got a big pile of poop under the desk. I'll just go ahead and show you that because, you know, this is what you deal with when you have that style of multicolor printing solution. You just got a bunch of 3D printer poop that piles up back there. I haven't come up with a way to store that, but it's just one of those silly things, you know. And as far as I can tell, it's about the same amount of waste as what you get on a Bambu Lab printer. Since they're using a similar multicolor unit with a similar filament cutting system and a similar purging system in the back, you end up with a lot of wasted filament that just gets flushed down the tube as it's trying to change colors there. Some things you can do to mitigate that is to minimize the amount of color changes that you're doing. And in the case of having a large format printer like this, that inherently helps reduce waste, because let's say I'm printing out 60 of these guys where I could only fit 30 of them on the Bambu Lab printer that has a 256 by 256 build area. well, then you're going to end up with twice as much material waste because you'll be doing twice as much material purging. Regardless of if you're doing 1 print or 60 prints, you end up with the same amount of waste in terms of switching material over. Now there are some tricks that you can do to purge waste material to the inside or the infill of parts, and I could play around with that and figure that out. But regardless, having more build area and being able to load up large batches of parts is always going to reduce the amount of waste that you have. Now seems like a good time to take a look at the print quality. It's just doing its automatic bed leveling right now, so nothing super interesting happening. Alright, so everyone likes to complain when I do a speed benchy using white filament because they say you can't see the layer lines. That's not true. You just need to adjust the exposure settings on the camera to get that contrast back. And well, maybe there is a point there. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see the flaws on this print because of that white filament. Likewise, with black, it's kind of hard to tell what the print quality is because that black material absorbs all the light. But, I mean, just taking a look at this, you can see the print quality is quite good. But, you know, you can't see the finer details of how that's looking. Red, I think, is kind of the same way. It's kind of hard to see print quality issues on this, but you can see it's got really good print quality. I mean, I'll let you just be the judge for yourself, whether you think this is good print quality or not. I think this is fantastic. You've just got a little bit of gaps in the corners here, which is probably a slicer setting away from being resolved. They just wanted to make the benchy as fast as possible. The material that I feel shows the print quality issues the best is this blue material. I'm not sure if this is showing up on camera, but this has the best contrast, and it really accentuates any layer lines that might be there. Again, with any other color, you're not really seeing those layer line issues, but on the blue, it really highlights any type of issues you might have. So let's take a closer look at this blue benchy to get the most critical look of this machine. And you can see, I mean, there's just really not a whole lot wrong with this thing. Here's the 3D benchy text at the back, and sorry for the noise, that's the CMS system running, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But the 3D benchy text in the back is kind of showing up there. It's a little faint, and a lot of the lines are kind of rounded out by the input shaper that they're using. So, you know, if you wanted higher quality, you could just slow this down. But in terms of a speed benchy result, this is quite impressive. I would not have any complaints with that. These are all 14-minute speed benchies, so insanely fast and really quality that you can't complain about. All of these were printed using Creality's Hyper PLA, so pretty good stuff there. So after determining blue was the best color to be able to see any print quality issues, I decided to print this giant thing out in blue. Here you can see some faint layer lines, nothing too bad. And overhang the top surfaces printed relatively well up to 60 degrees. So up to 60 degrees, everything's looking quite good. But once you get to 70 or 80 degrees, then the print quality starts to fall apart a little bit. I don't know what all the settings are for that stock tune profile, but you know, this is a 0.2 layer lines setup, and I just printed this out as fast as possible. I just dragged it into the slicer, click print, and we were good to go. So as I mentioned earlier, the first layer quality on this print was amazing. The rest of the print looks quite good as well. You can see it performed quite well with bridging and overhangs and you know, all this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and break one of these off to assess the layer adhesion a little bit. That's pretty typical performance. It's not super strong, it's not excessively weak. Overall, it's quite acceptable, and I don't think anyone would really complain about it. Creality's also done some new stuff with their slicer. They've completely revamped it to be able to support multicolor printing, and basically what that means is they've copied Bambu Studio or Orca Slicer. I'm not sure which software they forked this off of, but it's extremely similar to those software packages. So if you're familiar with those, then you should be able to get started on this pretty easily. And I'll give you a little preview of what that looks like. Alright, so here's an example project I put together in Creality Print. As you can see, it says here, subscribe to Nathan Builds Robots, the definitive source for 3D printer news. It says it's going to take a little over 4 hours to print that much material. This is on the high quality preset for 0.2 millimeters. I'm assuming that just decreases the accelerations and max speed. So just like in other slicers, you can see these options, but not unless you're in advanced mode, so just go ahead and click that. For the standard preset, it's quite a bit faster, and it looks like we can go down to 0.08 millimeters.
I'm using the quality preset because I want it to look good in the end, and so I don't mind waiting a little bit longer for it. To paint the model, all I did was go into this color menu, and I can go ahead and fill in different materials here. I could change this background color to blue. These interior areas have to be colored separately because they're not part of the same face. Let's change that back to white. Pretty easy to do, and then you can also draw on here. Oh, you know what? This will be fun. Let's draw something. Control Z. Control Z works. All right, and just to test this out, I'm gonna draw a little channel logo here. So let's go ahead and draw the antenna. Draw the little robot head. N B R. There we go. That looks great. My mother would be proud. Okay, so let's go ahead and slice this. You'll see how long it takes to slice and how all that works out. Now, one of the downsides of printing large models that are 350 by 350 is they take a little bit longer to slice. So that's one of the other reasons why it's nice to upgrade to a larger nozzle diameter so that the slicer finishes its job faster, but I guess it's not really that big of a deal. So there you have it. This is going to be my new channel logo. It looks amazing. Okay, let's get back to looking at some other aspects of the printer.
So this machine has taken a lot of design cues from Bambu Lab with that purge system in the back and the CMS, and basically a lot of parts of it are similar to the Bambu Lab machine, but also a lot of the kinematics on this machine are very similar to a VZ bot, which is something that, you know, a fellow YouTuber has designed. It's a really cool design, but in terms of having that square tube with a piece of linear rail on top and just the overall configuration of everything with the fans and all that, a lot of that was pioneered by VZBot, so I'm going to leave a link to his channel in the description below if you want to check him out. It's a very talented designer of 3D printers. And he definitely deserves some credit for producing such a good design that companies like Creality wanted to, I don't know, let's say take some design inspiration from. I got the mic right next to the printer. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can barely hear it. It's really not a loud printer. We'll open up the decibel meter app just so that we can get some noise readings. I'll get an arm's length away, as is the tradition. So it looks like it's right around 50 decibels, and every once in a while you'll hear a little bit of a noise from this CMS unit. When it engages its little motor, it jumps up to about 53 decibels. Overall, really not too loud and annoying. I'm pretty sensitive to noise. I hate having loud stuff in my office, which is why, you know, I get rid of a lot of the printers that make a lot of noise. This one's extremely quiet thanks to the well-built enclosure, which helps keep a lot of the noise in, and those motors that barely make any noise at all. So FOC motor controllers, we can talk about that later. I'm curious to open up the main board of this thing and see if they're actually using an FOC chip. They're really commonly used on washing machines, so you've noticed that washing machines have gotten a lot quieter over the years. That's one of the reasons a lot of them are switching over to FOC motor controllers, because they're quieter and more efficient. Okay, but really don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. We're just doing a general overview of the machine. All right, so let's open it up. Once it's opened up, you can hear the fan noise a little bit more. But yeah, let's just appreciate how fast this machine is going right now. Oh no, it hasn't changed colors yet. We'll give it a minute. But as you can see, it's pretty fast, pretty zippy. All right, so that was it doing its filament cutter thing. It's moving to the back, purging filament, purging more filament, and now it's retracting. You want to see it, it's up there. It's just pulling that filament back. That blue spool is almost empty, so it's winding it back onto the reel. And then it should start feeding in that white filament over on the left. And that's being fed into a system that's near identical to the Bambu Lab system, the AMS. So as far as I'm concerned, it's probably going to have the exact same specs and performance. It can do up to 16 colors using a little four-way splitter in the back. And it's just, you know, it does the Bambu thing essentially. One of the things that they've really improved on this model compared to some previous versions of Creality machines is they've really cleaned up the cable management. So you can see the cable chain up there. It's never running into issues where it's rubbing against things or making excessive noise or grinding up against stuff. They really made sure to have enough room up in this top compartment to fit that cable chain. So it's just, you know, it's running a lot better. I don't think you're going to have any issues with the cable management on this machine. And then just like a lot of machines, you have this removable glass cover up top. And you know, you actually have to be a little bit cautious about sticking your hands into a machine this fast and powerful with such good motors. So yeah, it's going to be a lot stronger. So it could really pinch your hand. You can see here it's got the little machinery hand pinchy warning there. So yeah, don't stick your hand in there if you can help it. Also, there's a little camera here. I haven't taken a look at the webcam footage you get out of this thing, but I assume it's going to be pretty much the same as what you're getting on the Creality K1 and Creality's latest printers. All right, so there you can see it switched over to white. This isn't the most impressive example of what you can do with multicolor printing, which is why I printed out all of these little guys so you can kind of get a better idea of what that's like. Oh my gosh, those fans are crazy. Look at this, whoa. That's crazy. So yeah, it kind of makes sense that Bambu Lab decided to move Black Friday up an entire month. I think they see the writing on the wall. This machine is incredibly good and will threaten their current flagship printer, Bambu Lab X1C, because it's basically the same price, but you're also getting a much larger build volume, a chamber heater, better build quality and looks. Like, you're getting an insane amount of stuff with this. And since it's Creality, I think it's running Clipper. I haven't confirmed this, but I believe it's running Clipper, and it'll get rolling updates based on community mods and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, this thing's going to be moddable. It's a really sturdy frame to be able to build your own crazy stuff off of. Like, let's say you wanted to convert one of these into an IDEX or something. You could probably do that, and you'd probably use the same, well, I don't know. You'd have to put extra motor controllers on there, and it might get a little bit tricky. So we'll have to look into some details of how that main board is set up as well. So far, Creality has been pretty good about contributing back to open source, something that other companies in the area aren't quite so good at. So hopefully we'll be able to get those field-oriented controlled motor controllers. I've been able to run this for about 4 days straight. I think in terms of overall print time, this took 18 hours, and each batch of these little guys took about 11 hours. So 18 plus 11 times 3, plus some other random prints. I think I'm looking at about 50 hours of print time in a short amount of time. And so far, everything's held up really well. There's a bunch of technical details that we could get into in this machine and really just kind of hardware geek out about it. But as of now, I've just unboxed this and been throwing prints at it constantly, and they've been coming out really good. Really no quality complaints at all about this machine. And yeah, I'm going to be really happy to use this for all of my design prototyping needs. Hopefully that gave you a little bit of an idea of what this machine is all about. I'm going to continue to use this as my primary printer for the next month or so, and I'll give you some updated thoughts in a future video based on more extensive usage. One thing that I find really limiting on a lot of other machines is that I have limited build area, and also the lack of an enclosure or chamber heater. You end up with a situation where when you print really big parts, you get internal stresses and they kind of get weaker. But since we've got a chamber heater, we've got a really big build volume, got good first layer adhesion, that gives me the confidence to be able to tackle really large prints and know that they're probably going to come out all right. So the main competitors to this machine are obviously going to be the Bambu Lab X1C. That's a much smaller printer though, so I don't know if it's really even competing in the same realm. And there's also the SVO8, which is from Soval. It's got about the same build volume, but that machine's a lot chunkier, it's larger, and the frame on that machine is really not built with a lot of stiffness overhead. So like that frame is super rickety and wobbly. It's built like a milk crate, and I mean that in more ways than one. This frame, on the other hand, is just incredibly strong. Really cool machine here, and I hope to see more cool stuff like this from Creality in the future. So yeah, it's a good day to be a Creality fanboy, and if you pre-ordered one of these machines, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Now, it remains to be seen if Creality can mass produce this. I believe this is some kind of first production model of this machine, so the first machines coming off the assembly line. They send them out to influencers like me to just make some videos about them. So this video is sponsored in the sense that they gave me a free machine that I'm really happy with. But other than that, you know, I'm very honest about machines that I don't like, and this is definitely not one of those machines. This is a very nice machine. This is a good machine. So, really excited about it. If you have any questions about the K2 Plus, let me know in the comments down below, and maybe we can look at it in that future video that I make on my more longer term thoughts of using this machine. So, I didn't want this to be a super long video, but you know, there you have it. Seems like a really nice machine. We'll test out some of its more advanced capabilities as we go. Maybe take off the back panels and look at some of the stuff that's going on in the electronic side of things in a future video. Also, I want to give a congratulations to the Creality team for coming out with a stellar product. I really hope this thing ends up making your customers happy, as it has made me very happy. This is a very cool machine, and I'm going to be printing lots of cool stuff on it. All right, so that's about all I have for this episode. Thanks for watching this. Make sure to subscribe for future updates on my experience with this printer. If it breaks down or craps out or I have some random issues with it, I'll be sure to let you know.
My channel logo. It's gonna look very professional. This is like the Sonichu version of my channel logo. Oh gosh, this isn't looking great. If you subscribe to the channel, you might... Anyways.